The great hall of the Galactic Council was bigger than most cities. Thousands of beings from across the galaxy sat in floating chairs that moved through the air like slow-moving birds. The walls were made of crystal that showed the stars outside, and the ceiling stretched so high that clouds sometimes formed near the top. Jake Sullivan sat with the other humans in a small section, near the back. The human seats were plain metal chairs. It did not float like the others. This was done on purpose. The older alien races wanted to remind everyone that humans were new here and not very important. Jake was 42 years old with brown hair. That was starting to turn gray. He had fought in 3 wars before becoming a diplomat. His uniform was simple blue cloth, nothing like the fancy robes and armor worn by the other delegates. But his eyes were sharp and kind, and he watched everything. That happened in the Great Hall. Today was special. Today, one of the most powerful aliens in the galaxy was going to fall. Ambassador Zara Keth stood in the center of the hall. She was Valerian, which meant her skin was blue like deep ocean water and seemed to glow with its own light. Her people were one of the oldest races in the galaxy. They had been traveling between stars when humans were still living in caves. The Valerians thought they were better than everyone else, especially humans. Zara Keth was tall and beautiful in the way. Her people were. Her long white hair flowed down her back like water. She wore robes of silver that cost more than most humans made in their whole lives. But today, she did not look proud and strong like usual. Today, she looked scared. The judge was a creature that looked like a giant tree with eyes. It spoke in a voice that sounded like wind through leaves. Zara Keth of the Valerian Empire, you have been found guilty of stealing money meant to help poor worlds. You took food from hungry children. You took medicine from the sick. What do you say? Zara Keth lifted her chin. Even now, even when everything was falling apart, she tried to look brave. I say that I am innocent. Someone else did these crimes and made it look like I did them. The creatures in the hall began to laugh. Not the kind of laugh people make when something is funny. This was the cruel laugh of those who enjoy seeing others suffer. Listen to her, said Ambassador Thex of the Reptilian Dominion. He looked like a giant lizard wearing clothes, still trying to lie her way out of trouble. The mighty Valerians, hissed another voice. Not so high and proud now. Jake felt sick as he listened to the laughter. He did not like Zara Keth or her people. The Valerians had been mean to humans since first contact. They called humans primitive apes. They said humans were too stupid and violent to be in the council. But seeing someone being kicked when they were down made Jake angry. The tree judge spoke again. You are guilty. You will lose your rank. You will lose your family name. You will be sent to the mining world of Kepler 442b for the rest of your life. The hall exploded with noise. Some creatures cheered. Others made clicking sounds that meant they were happy. A few beings that looked like floating gas clouds pulsed with bright colors that showed their joy at seeing a Valerian punished. Guards came forward to take Zara Keth away. They were big robots with no faces, just metal and lights. As they reached for her, she stepped back. For just a moment, the mask of pride fell from her face. Jake saw fear there, and something else, loneliness. Wait, she said. Her voice was shaking now. I have served the Council for 30 years. I have helped make peace between warring worlds. I have saved millions of lives. Does that count for nothing? The laughter got louder. You should have thought of that before you became a thief, someone shouted. Maybe this will teach your whole race some respect, called another voice. Zara Keth looked around the hall. She was searching for one friendly face, one person who might speak up for her. But there was no one. Even the other Valerian delegates looked away. They did not want to be connected to her shame. The robot guards put metal bands around her wrists. The bands would make sure she could not use her natural Valerian powers to escape. As they did this, she stumbled. The long silver robes that had made her look so grand now seemed to weigh her down. She fell to one knee. The laughter became a roar. Jake watched as the woman, who had once been one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy, knelt on the crystal floor while thousands of creatures mocked her. She tried to stand up, but the heavy robes and the shock of what was happening made it hard. She fell again. "Look at her crawl," someone yelled. "Not so high and mighty now," called another. Jake felt his hands make fists. This was wrong. Yes, if she was guilty, she should be punished. But this was not justice. This was a pack of animals, tearing apart something that was hurt. He looked at his fellow humans. Some were watching with interest, like it was a show. Others looked uncomfortable, but did nothing. His aide, Lieutenant Lisa Parker, was writing notes and trying not to look at what was happening. "This is getting ugly," Lisa whispered to him. "It was always ugly," Jake said back. "We just could not see it before." The robot guards pulled Zaraketh to her feet. She was crying now, though she tried to hide it. Valerian tears were like liquid silver. They ran down her blue cheeks and fell to the floor, where they made tiny silver pools dot. As the guards started to lead her away, the crowd began to break up. The show was over. Time to go back to their important business of running the galaxy. But Jake noticed that Zaraketh kept looking back over her shoulder, still hoping someone might stand up for her. No one did. The great hall slowly emptied as delegates floated away in their chairs, or walked out on their various legs, tentacles, or whatever they used to move. Soon, only a few hundred beings were left in the huge space. The robot guards had stopped near one of the side doors. They seemed to be waiting for something. Zaraketh sat alone on a bench near the wall. The silver robes were torn now and dirty from her falls. Her white hair was no longer perfect. She looked small and broken, nothing like the proud ambassador who had ruled her people's fate for so many years. Jake made a decision that would change everything. He stood up from his plain metal chair and walked across the crystal floor. His footsteps echoed in the nearly empty hall. A few remaining delegates turned to watch him. What was the human doing? Lisa called after him. "Jake, do not get involved. This is not our problem." But Jake kept walking. He had seen enough cruelty for one day. Someone had to do the right thing, even if it was stupid. Especially if it was stupid. As he got closer, Zaraketh looked up. Her silver eyes were wide with surprise. What could this human want with her? Her people had spent decades telling humans they were not worth notice. Why would one of them come to her now when she had nothing left to offer? "Ambassador Zaraketh," Jake said. His voice was quiet but strong. She straightened her back, trying to find some of her old dignity. "I am no longer an ambassador, human. I am nothing now." "That is not true," Jake said. "You are still a person. And right now, you look like you could use a friend." The few remaining delegates stared in shock. A human was talking to the disgraced Valerian as if she were still important, as if she still mattered. Jake held out his hand. Zaraketh stared at the human's outstretched hand like it was a poisonous snake. Her silver eyes moved from his hand to his face and back again. Around them, the few remaining delegates whispered to each other in their strange languages. "What do you want from me?" she asked. Her voice was cold, but Jake could hear the fear underneath. She had been hurt too much today to trust anyone, especially a human. "I do not want anything," Jake said. He kept his hand out, waiting. "I just think you should not have to face this alone." "Alone?" Zaraketh laughed, but it was not a happy sound. I have been alone since the moment they read those charges. My own people turned their backs on me. My friends pretended they did not know me. Why would you be different? Jake thought about this for a moment. Why was he doing this? It would hurt his career. The other humans would think he was crazy. The aliens would think he was weak. But when he looked at Zaraketh sitting there in her torn silver robes, he saw something that reminded him of his own past. 5 years ago, Jake said, I made a mistake during a battle. A big mistake. People died because of what I did. When I came back to Earth, everyone looked at me like I was a monster. I lost my friends. I lost my rank. I almost lost my mind. Zaraketh was listening now, her anger replaced by curiosity. But one person helped me, Jake continued. An old general named Frank Peters. He did not have to help me. It would have been easier to let me fall. But he said something I will never forget. He said that we judge a society not by how it treats its heroes, but by how it treats those who have fallen. So you think I have fallen? Zaraketh said. Her voice was bitter. I think you are going through the worst day of your life, Jake said. And I think you deserve better than being laughed at by a bunch of cowards who are too scared to help someone who needs it. The robot guards stepped forward. One of them spoke in a voice like grinding metal. Transport will arrive in 10 minutes. A prisoner must be ready to leave. I am not a prisoner, Zaraketh said quickly. I am an exile. Same thing, the robot said and stepped back. Jake's hand was still extended. He had been holding it out for almost 5 minutes now, but he did not pull it back. Other delegates were taking pictures with their communication devices. This would be all over the Galaxy news networks within an hour. Human diplomat offers help to disgraced Valerian criminal. If I take your hand, Zaraketh said slowly, what happens then? Then you are not alone, Jake said simply. But you are human. Your people hate my people. We have called you primitive. We have said you do not belong in the council. We have blocked every proposal you have made for the last 20 years. Jake nodded. Yes, you have. And maybe that makes me stupid for being here, but I learned something during my own dark time. Hate is heavy. It makes everything harder. Kindness is lighter. It makes things possible. Zaraketh looked around the hall. A few Valerian delegates were still there, watching from far away. When she looked at them, they turned and walked quickly toward the exits. They did not want to be seen near her. My own people, she whispered. They act like I have some disease they might catch. Fear makes people stupid, Jake said. They think if they help you, they might end up where you are. And you are not afraid? Jake smiled. I am terrified. This is probably going to destroy my career. But I learned that doing the right thing is more important than doing the safe thing. Lieutenant Lisa Parker appeared at Jake's side. She was a young woman with red hair and sharp green eyes. She had been Jake's aide for 2 years and had never seen him do anything this crazy. Commander Sullivan, she said in a low voice, we need to talk about this. The ambassador from Earth is already asking questions. The news networks are calling. This is going to be a mess. Then it will be a mess, Jake said. He still had not moved his hand. Sir, with respect, helping her will not change anything. She is still going to prison. You are just making trouble for yourself and for all humans. Maybe, Jake said. Or maybe showing a little kindness will change something important. Zaraketh was listening to their conversation. She could see that Jake was risking something real by helping her. This was not some easy gesture that cost him nothing. This could hurt his whole species' position in the council. Why? She asked again. Why risk so much for someone you do not even know? Jake lowered his hand for the first time since he had offered it. He sat down on the bench next to her, careful to leave space between them. The robot guards watched, but did not stop him. "When I was a kid," Jake said, "I lived in a bad part of town. Lots of gangs, lots of violence. One day, I was walking home from school when 3 older boys cornered me in an alley. They were going to beat me up and take my money." Zaraketh turned to face him, interested despite herself. "Just when I thought I was going to get hurt badly, this old man came walking down the alley. He was small and old, and did not look strong. The boys laughed at him and told him to keep walking, but he did not. He stood next to me and said, 'If you want to hurt this boy, you will have to go through me first.' What happened? The boys left. They did not want to hurt an old man, even to get to me. Afterward, I asked him why he helped me. He said, 'Because someone helped me once when I needed it.' That is how kindness works. You pass it on." Jake looked at Zaraketh directly. "You helped broker the peace treaty between the Zephyrian Empire and the Crystal Collective 5 years ago. That treaty saved millions of lives. You know about that? I studied all your work before coming to the council. You have done good things, important things. Maybe you did something wrong. Maybe you did not. But either way, you are more than the worst thing you have ever done." For the first time since the trial began, Zaraketh's face softened. Someone remembered her good work. Someone knew she was more than just a criminal. "The transport is here," announced one of the robot guards. Through the crystal walls, they could see a black ship landing on the platform outside. It looked like a flying prison. "Time to go," the robot said. Jake stood up and held out his hand again. "You do not have to take it. But if you do, you will. Know that someone believes you are worth helping." Zaraketh looked at his hand for a long moment. Then she looked at the approaching transport ship. Then she looked at the few remaining delegates who were watching this strange scene. Taking help from a human would be the final humiliation. Her people would never forgive her. The other races would mock her even more. It would mean admitting that humans were not beneath her, but she was tired of being proud. Pride had not helped her during the trial. Pride had not stopped her friends from abandoning her. Pride was just another word for being alone. Slowly, very slowly, she reached out and took Jake's hand. The moment their hands touched, cameras flashed throughout the hall. The remaining delegates gasped and whispered. This had never happened before. A Valerian noble accepting help from a human. Jake's hand was warm and rough from years of work. Zaraketh's hand was smooth and cool. But when they touched, something passed between them. Not romance, but understanding. Two people who had both known what it meant to fall and what it meant to need help. "Thank you," she whispered. "You are welcome," Jake said. Together they walked toward the transport ship that would take Zaraketh to her exile. But she was not walking alone anymore. And somehow, that made all the difference. The mining world of Kepler 442b was nothing like the beautiful crystal cities of the Valerian Empire. It was a planet of red dirt and black rocks under a sky that was always gray. 2 small suns gave weak light that made everything look tired and old. The air smelled of metal and dust, and the wind never stopped blowing. Zaraketh stood outside the transport ship, wearing prison clothes made of rough brown cloth. The silver robes were gone. The beautiful jewelry was gone. Even her long white hair had been cut short as part of the prison rules. She looked like any other criminal now. Around her, other prisoners were working. Most were aliens she had never seen before. Some looked like giant insects with too many arms. Others were covered in fur and walked on 4 legs. A few were so strange she could not tell which end was their head, but there were also humans. This surprised her. She had thought humans were too new to the galaxy to have criminals in the prison system. But here they were, working alongside everyone else. They did not look special or different. They just looked like people trying to survive. "Welcome to hell," said a voice behind her. Zaraketh turned around and saw another Valerian. This one was older, with scars on his blue skin and clothes that had been patched many times. His name was Veltoron, and he had been here for 8 years. "What did you do to end up here?" Zaraketh asked. "I questioned an order from a superior," Veltoron said with a bitter laugh. "Turns out that is treason if the superior has enough. Friends, what about you? They say I stole money meant for relief supplies." "Did you?" Zaraketh looked at him with surprise. "No, of course not. Does not matter here," Veltoron said. "Guilty or innocent, we all dig the same holes." He pointed to the mining operation. Giant machines were cutting into the side of a mountain, looking for rare metals that were used to build spaceship engines. The work was dangerous and hard. Every day, someone got hurt. Every few months, someone died. "The trick is to stay alive long enough to maybe get out," Veltoron said. "Though most of us will die here." Gargard Robot rolled up to them. It looked like a metal box on wheels with arms that could grab things. "New prisoner will report to work assignment. Sector 7, deep mining." Zaraketh did not know what deep mining meant, but Veltoron's face went pale. "That is the worst job," he whispered. "They put the troublemakers there, and the ones they want to break. Why would they put me there? I just arrived. Because you are famous. Because half the galaxy saw you take help from a human. They want to punish you extra for that." Zaraketh felt her heart sink. She had thought things could not get worse. She was wrong. Sector 7 was deep underground. The air was hot and hard to breathe. The tunnels were narrow and always felt like they might fall down. Water dripped from the ceiling and made everything slippery. The only light came from small lamps that gave off a sick yellow glow. Zaraketh was given a heavy tool that was used to break rocks. Her job was to hit the wall over and over until pieces fell off. Then other prisoners would carry the pieces away. It was simple work, but it was also the hardest thing she had ever done. By the end of her first day, her hands were bleeding. Her back hurt so much she could barely stand up. Her beautiful blue skin was covered with dirt and cuts. She had never been so tired in her life. The other prisoners in Sector 7 were not friendly. There were 2 more Valerians who would not speak to her. They were ashamed to be seen with someone who had accepted help from a human. There were also some reptilian prisoners who enjoyed making her life harder because they had always hated her people. "Look at the princess," one of them would say when she struggled with the heavy rocks. "Not so fancy now." But there were also 3 humans in Sector 7. Their names were Ben Carter, Kate Murphy, and old Eddie Robinson. Ben was young and strong, and had been a soldier before coming here. Kate was small, but tough and knew how to fix the broken mining equipment. Eddie was 60 years old and had been in prison for 15 years. But he still smiled and told jokes to keep everyone's spirits up. At first, the humans ignored Zaraketh just like everyone else. She had expected this. Her people had been cruel to humans for decades. Why should they be kind to her now? But on her 3rd day, something happened that changed everything. Zaraketh was working alone in a side tunnel when she heard a terrible sound. Rock was falling somewhere nearby. Someone was shouting for help. She dropped her tool and ran toward the sound. In a narrow passage, she found Ben Carter trapped under a pile of stones. His leg was twisted at a bad angle, and he was bleeding from his head. The tunnel was still making dangerous sounds, like more rocks might fall at any moment. The smart thing to do was run and get help. But Ben was losing a lot of blood. He might die before help arrived. Zaraketh did not think. She just acted. She started moving rocks off Ben's body. The stones were heavy and sharp, and they cut her hands worse than before. But she kept working. Some of the rocks were too big for her to move alone, so she used her mining tool like a lever to push them away. "Why are you helping me?" Ben asked. Through his pain. He was confused and maybe a little suspicious. "Because you need help," Zaraketh said. It was the same thing Jake Sullivan had told her. Just as she got the last big rock off Ben's leg, she heard more sounds from above. The tunnel was going to collapse completely. She grabbed Ben under his arms and started dragging him toward safety. He was much heavier than she was, and her strength was almost gone. They almost did not make it. Just as they reached the main tunnel, the passage behind them filled with falling stone. If they had been 5 seconds slower, they both would have died. Kate Murphy and Eddie Robinson came running when they heard the noise. They found Zaraketh sitting on the ground, breathing hard, with Ben's head in her lap. Both of them were covered in blood and dust. "What happened?" Kate asked. "She saved my life," Ben said. His voice was weak but clear. "The tunnel came down and she got me out." Kate and Eddie looked at Zaraketh with new eyes. This was not what they had expected from a Valerian noble. Valerians were supposed to be selfish and proud. They were supposed to think other species were not worth saving. "Thank you," Eddie said simply. Word of what happened spread through the prison quickly. By the next day, everyone knew that the fallen Valerian ambassador had risked her life to save a human. Some prisoners did not care. Others thought she was just trying to make herself look good. But the humans in Sector 7 started treating her differently. Kate began showing her easier ways to do the work. Eddie shared his food with her when her portions were too small. Ben, once his leg healed enough for him to walk, made sure the other prisoners did not bother her too much. "Why are you being kind to me?" Zaraketh asked Eddie one day during their short break. "Because you were kind first," Eddie said. "And because a friend of mine once told me that you judge people by what they do, not by what species they are or where they come from." "Your friend sounds wise." "He is. His name is Jake Sullivan. He is a commander in the human fleet." Zaraketh's eyes went wide. "Jake Sullivan is your friend?" "Was. I have not seen him in years. But he helped me once. When? I needed it most. Kind of like what he did for you, I think." "How do you know about that?" Eddie smiled. "News travels, even to places like this. The whole galaxy knows about the human who helped the fallen Valerian. And what do they think about it? Most think he was crazy. Some think he was weak. But a few think he was brave. What do you think?" Eddie looked at her seriously. "I think he saw something in you that you did not see in yourself. And I think maybe he was right." As the days passed, Zaraketh began to understand what Eddie meant. Working alongside the humans, she started to see them as they really were. They were not the primitive, violent creatures her people had taught her to fear. They were smart and brave and funny. They took care of each other. They did not give up when things got hard. Most importantly, they judged her by her actions, not by her past mistakes or her species. When she worked hard, they respected her. When she helped others, they helped her back. It was simple and honest, in a way that politics had never been. 3 months into her time on Kepler 442b, Zaraketh realized something that shocked her. Despite the hard work and the danger and the terrible conditions, she was happier than she had been in years. For the first time in her life, she felt like she belonged somewhere. And it was all because a human had reached out his hand when she was falling. 6 months had passed since Zaraketh arrived on Kepler 442b. The work was still hard, and the conditions were still bad. But she had found something she never expected to find in prison. She had found friends. Ben Carter's leg had healed well, though he still walked with a small limp. Kate Murphy had taught Zaraketh how to repair the mining equipment, which made their work much easier. Old Eddie Robinson continued to tell his stories and jokes, keeping everyone's spirits up during the long days underground. But the biggest surprise came on a Tuesday morning when a new transport ship arrived. Zaraketh was eating breakfast in the prison dining hall when she saw him. Commander Jake Sullivan was walking through the door, wearing the same simple blue uniform she remembered from the council chambers. But now he also wore the gray badge that marked him as a prison supervisor. "What is he doing here?" whispered Kate Murphy. "I do not know," Zaraketh said. Her heart was beating fast. She had not seen Jake since the day he helped her onto the transport ship. Jake spoke to the prison warden, a large robot with red lights for eyes. Then he looked around the dining hall until he found Zaraketh. He nodded at her once, just a small movement of his head, but she saw it. Later that day, word spread through the prison. Commander Sullivan was the new head of mining safety. His job was to make sure the prisoners did not die in accidents that could be prevented. Some prisoners thought this was good news. Others thought it would just mean more rules and more trouble. Zaraketh did not know what to think. 3 days after Jake arrived, she was working in Sector 7 when he came to inspect the tunnels. He walked through the dangerous passages, taking notes on his electronic tablet. He spoke to the prisoners about their work and asked if they had suggestions for making things safer. When he got to Zaraketh, he stopped. "How are you doing?" he asked. "I am alive," she said. "That is more than I expected when I first got here. I heard about what you did for Ben Carter. That was brave." Zaraketh felt her cheeks turn darker blue, which was how Valerians blushed. Anyone would have done the same thing. "No," Jake said quietly. "Not anyone. Most people would have run for help and let someone else take the risk." He moved on to inspect other parts of the tunnel, but Zaraketh felt warm inside. Jake had come all this way. He had given up his position at the council to work in a prison. Why would he do that? She got her answer that evening. Jake found her sitting alone on a bench outside the prison barracks. The 2 small suns were setting, painting the sky purple and orange. For a few minutes, the ugly mining world almost looked beautiful. "Mind if I sit?" Jake asked. "It is your prison now," Zaraketh said. "You can sit wherever you want." Jake sat down, leaving space between them like he had done in the council chambers. "It is not my prison. I just work here." "Why?" Zaraketh asked. "Why did you come here? You had a good job with the council. You had a future. Why throw it all away for a place like this?" Jake was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was soft. "Do you remember what I told you about the old man who helped me when I was a kid?" "Yes. After he saved me from those boys, I asked him why he did it. He said something I never forgot. He said that kindness is like a seed. You plant it in one place, and it grows somewhere else. You might never see where it grows, but it does grow." Zaraketh thought about this. "And you think helping me was planting a seed?" "I think you helping Ben Carter was the seed growing," Jake said. "But there is more to it than that." He pulled out his tablet and showed her a news report. The headline read, "Human diplomat gives up career to follow disgraced alien to prison." This story went out to every world in the galaxy, Jake said. "People are talking about it everywhere. Some think I am crazy, but others are asking questions they never asked before." "What kind of questions?" "Questions about why we treat prisoners so badly. Questions about whether people can change. Questions about what it means to help someone who cannot help you back." Zaraketh read more of the news report. It talked about reforms being discussed in several alien governments. Some worlds were looking at their own prison systems and deciding to make them more humane. A few species were even starting to work together on projects they had never tried before. "This is because you helped me?" she asked. "This is because you proved that people can change," Jake said. "When you saved Ben, you showed the galaxy that Valerians are not all selfish and cruel. When the story got out, other people started thinking about their own prejudices." Zaraketh felt tears starting to form in her eyes. "But I am still here. I am still a prisoner. My life is still ruined." "Is it?" Jake asked gently. Before she could answer, Ben Carter came walking over to them. Behind him were Kate Murphy and Eddie Robinson, along with several other prisoners who had become Zaraketh's friends. "Sorry to interrupt," Ben said, "but we wanted to tell you something." "What?" Zaraketh asked. "We have been talking," Kate said, "all of us. And we think you should know that you are not the same person who came here 6 months ago." "What do?" "You mean?" Eddie Robinson sat down on the other side of Zaraketh. "When you first got here, you were angry and scared and broken. You thought your life was over. But look at you now." "I am still in prison," Zaraketh said. "But you are not still broken," Eddie said. "You laugh at my jokes. You help people when they need it. You have learned to do hard work without complaining. You have become a real person instead of just a title and a fancy dress." "He is right," Ben said. "The person who saved my life is not the same person who stood trial in the council chambers." "You are better now." Zaraketh looked around at their faces. These people had become her family in a way that her real family never had. They cared about her not because of what she used to be, but because of who she had become. "There is something else," Jake said. He pulled out another document on his tablet. "I got some news today." "What kind of news?" "The kind that changes everything." Jake showed her an official message from the Galactic Council. As Zaraketh read it, her silver eyes got wider and wider. "This cannot be real," she whispered. "It is real," Jake said. "A team of investigators found new evidence about your case. They discovered communication records that prove you are trying to stop the corruption, not cause it. The real criminals have been arrested. I am innocent. You are always innocent. Now the galaxy knows it too." Zaraketh stared at the document. According to the message, all charges against her had been dropped. She was free to go. More than that, the Galactic Council was offering to restore her rank and position. The Valerian Empire wanted to give her an even higher job than before. "You can go home," Jake said. "You can have your old life back." For a moment, Zaraketh felt pure joy. She was free. She was innocent. She could leave this terrible place and return to comfort and respect. But then she looked around at her friends. Ben, who trusted her enough to let her save his life. Kate, who had taught her to find pride in honest work. Eddie, who had shown her that happiness could be found anywhere. Jake, who had given up everything to make sure she was not alone. "My old life," she said slowly. "What if I do not want my old life back?" "What do you mean?" Jake asked. Zaraketh stood up and walked to the edge of the bench area. From there, she could see the mining operation, the prison barracks, and the endless red landscape of Kepler 442b. 6 months ago, this place had seemed like the end of the world. Now it felt like the beginning of something new. "What if," she said, "instead of going back to who I was, I decided to become who I could be?" The others looked at each other with confusion and hope. "What are you thinking?" Jake asked. Zaraketh turned back to face them, and for the first time in months, she was smiling. "I am thinking that maybe it is time to plant some seeds of our own." 3 weeks later, Zaraketh stood once again in the great hall of the Galactic Council. But this time, everything was different. She was not wearing the torn silver robes of a fallen noble. Instead, she wore simple clothes like the ones she had learned to work in on Kepler 442b. Her hair was still short, and her hands still showed the scars from mining work. She looked like someone who had learned to do hard things and was proud of it. Next to her stood Jake Sullivan, also in his simple uniform. Behind them were Ben Carter, Kate Murphy, and Eddie Robinson. The former prisoners had been brought to the council as witnesses to something that had never happened before. The hall was packed. Every seat was filled with delegates from across the galaxy. News networks from 100 worlds were recording everything. Everyone wanted to see what the fallen Valerian would do, now that she had been proven innocent. The tree judge spoke first. Zaraketh of the Valerian Empire, this council has found that you were wrongly accused. We offer our apologies for the injustice done to you. You are free to return to your former position with full honors. The hall was quiet, waiting for her. Response: I thank the council for recognizing the truth, Zaraketh said. Her voice was strong and clear. But I must decline your offer. Gasps echoed through the hall. Delegates turned to each other in confusion. A Valerian noble was refusing. To take back her power? I decline, Zaraketh continued, because I have learned something during my time in exile. I have learned that there are more important things than rank and honor. She gestured to her human friends. These people taught me that real strength comes not from ruling over others, but from helping them. They showed me that the best life is not the most comfortable life, but the most useful one. Ambassador Thex of the Reptilian Dominion stood up. This is ridiculous. You were wrongly imprisoned. You deserve compensation, not continued exile. I was not in exile, Zaraketh said. I was in school, and I learned lessons that I could never have learned in a palace. The Valerian delegation was whispering angrily among themselves. Their representative, a tall woman with elaborate jewelry, stood to speak. Zaraketh, you are making a mistake. Come home. Take your place among our people. Forget this foolishness with humans. I will not forget, Zaraketh said firmly. And I will not come home. At least, not to the home I used to know. She walked to the center of the hall, where speakers were supposed to stand when making formal proposals. I come before this council today to propose something new, she announced. I propose the creation of the Interspecies Rehabilitation and Cooperation Project. Jake smiled. They had worked on this proposal together during the long journey back to the council station. The project would have 3 goals, Zaraketh continued. First, to reform the prison systems throughout the galaxy. No being should have to live in the terrible conditions I saw on Kepler 442b. Prisoners are still people, and they deserve to be treated with basic dignity. Some delegates nodded. Others looked skeptical. Second, to create programs where different species can work together on real problems. Not just trade agreements or peace treaties, but actual projects where we help each other. And third, asked the tree judge. Third, to prove that any being can change for the better, regardless of their species or their past mistakes. We will do this by example, by showing rather than just talking. The hall erupted in noise. Some creatures were cheering. Others were arguing. The reptilian delegates were making angry hissing sounds. The gas-based beings were pulsing with colors that meant they were upset. This is insane, shouted Ambassador Thex. You want us to trust criminals? You want us to work with species we have been fighting for centuries? I want us to try being better than we have been, Zaraketh said simply. Ben Carter stepped forward. As a former prisoner, he was not supposed to speak in the council, but the guards did not stop him. If I may, he said. 6 months ago, I would have died in a tunnel collapse. But someone saved me. Someone who had every reason to hate humans. Someone who risked her life for a person she barely knew. He looked at Zaraketh with respect. If she can change, if I can change, if all of us in that prison can learn to work together despite our differences, then maybe there is hope for everyone. Kate Murphy spoke next. The proposal is not just about being nice. It is about being smart. When different species work together, we solve problems faster. We think of ideas that none of us would have alone. The mining operation on Kepler 442b became twice as efficient when we started sharing our knowledge, instead of just doing our own work. Eddie Robinson was the last to speak. I have been in prison for 15 years. I have seen how hate and fear make everything worse. But I have also seen how kindness can turn enemies into friends. This project could do that for the whole galaxy. The tree judge considered their words. This proposal would require massive changes to laws and traditions that have existed for thousands of years. Yes, Zaraketh said. It would. It would be expensive and difficult, and many people would oppose it. Yes, it might fail completely. It might, Zaraketh agreed. But it might also work. And if it works, it could change everything. Jake stepped forward to stand beside her. The Terran Federation offers its full support for this project. We volunteer to be the first to test these new ideas. And if other species refuse to participate, ask the tree judge, then we start small, Zaraketh said. We prove it works with those who are willing to try. Others will join when they see the results. The debate went on for hours. Some delegates were excited by the idea. Others thought it was impossible. The Valerian delegation was angry that one of their own was choosing to work with humans instead of coming home. But slowly, something started to happen. A few delegates from smaller species began to speak in favor of the project. They talked about problems their worlds faced that might be solved by working with others. They talked about old conflicts that everyone was tired of fighting. As the day went on, more voices joined in support. Not all of them, not even most of them, but enough. Finally, the tree judge called for a vote. All in favor of creating a trial version of the Interspecies Rehabilitation and Cooperation Project? Lights began appearing throughout the hall as delegates cast their votes. Green lights meant yes. Red lights meant no. Yellow lights meant undecided. When the counting was finished, the result was close but clear. The project had been approved. For a trial period of 2 years, the hall erupted in cheers and boos. Zaraketh felt tears running down her cheeks, but this time they were tears of joy. Jake put his hand on her shoulder. We did it. We started it, Zaraketh corrected. Now we have to make it work. As they left the council hall together, followed by their friends and a crowd of reporters, Zaraketh thought about how much had changed since that terrible day when she had fallen from Greystad. She had lost her title, her wealth, and her old life, but she had gained something much more valuable. She had gained friends who cared about her for who she was, not what she could do for them. She had gained work that mattered, that could help people throughout the galaxy. And she had gained the knowledge that she was capable of being better than she used to be. Most importantly, she had learned that sometimes falling down is the first step to standing up taller than before. The project started small. 1 reformed prison. 1 joint human Valerian research station. 1 program where former enemies worked together to help refugees from the war zones. But seeds, as Jake had said, have a way of growing in unexpected places. Within a year, 12 species had joined the project. Within 2 years, it had spread to 50 worlds. Within 5 years, it had become the largest interspecies cooperation effort in galactic history. And it all started because a human reached out his hand to someone who was falling. And because that someone decided to use her second chance to lift others up. The galaxy never forgot the story of the fallen Valerian and the human who helped her. But more than remembering it, they lived it. Every day, in small ways and large. Beings throughout the stars reached out to help those who were falling. Because kindness, once planted, grows everywhere.